Hi, I'm Debs and I'm really excited to be at this week's Adventure Queen sessions. I really enjoy sport in the outdoors. I'm a PE teacher as my day job and I'm also an OS Get Outside champion, and my favourite thing about being in the outdoors is journeys. I just love getting myself from point to point, being able to look at a map and say, oh yes, I did that, my human power did that. And mostly that's taken the form of bike trips, and I've done some really long bike trips, and also some week or so long hikes as well. A few years ago, we started to see stand-up paddleboards get more and more popular, and we were cycling across the US at the time. We could still see them everywhere. Every time there was a lake, we'd see people out on SUPs. We had a couple of goes on them and thought, you know what, we could tour on one of these at some point. So a few years later, when we were back in the UK, we started to look into that a bit more and couldn't really find any information at all. But I'd had an extra go on a SUP at Hen Weekend, so we thought, how difficult can it be? We'll buy a couple and give it a go. Now, when we started to think about kit and packing, we basically just looked at what we had from cycling. We had quite a few dry bags and stuff like that, and looked at how we can adapt it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions around that in the session. When we started to look at routes, it was kind of even trickier because a lot of the routes are written about touring, overnight touring for kayaks and canoes, are the Y and the 7. And we were living at the time in Leicester, so to get over to the start points and home from the end points there is a bit of a trek really, and it's quite tricky. It wasn't easy on public transport, and it seems to me a bit wild to do a low carbon trip sandwiched by two quite high carbon car journeys, or some kind of faff of the car goes here and then you get here and you have to get a bus or a taxi back and whatever it happens to be, and that's a real buzzkill at the end of an adventure. So instead we started to look at what was on the public transport network, and then we thought, even easier, let's just look at what we could do right from our front door. And so it was that in August 2018 we set off from our front door. We got a taxi 5 minutes down the road to a bit of river. We got into the Soar and we paddled up the Soar to its junction with the Trent and up the Trent to Newark, and 5 days later we got on a train and got back home and just walked home with the paddleboards on our backs. It was certainly one of the best adventures I've been on, and actually the only thing that can possibly have eclipsed it was last summer when our stand-up paddleboard tour started with a rail replacement bus service to Bedford. And if that isn't a romantic start to a journey, then I don't know what is. So I hope you join us next Monday night to talk all things SUP touring. Hope you've got plenty of questions, and I'll share some photos and maybe some video clips and tell you about all the brilliant things we've seen on the waterways of the UK.